don't we just start by having everybody in the panel just give us a little bit more summary of what they did when they were here at Illini Media and how they transitioned out into the workforce. So why don't we start with Megan? We'll do the virtual panelists first, and then we'll end up here with James and Aaron. So Megan, you want to start?
Sure. I started off at the Daily Illini in 2013 as a news reporter. Worked my way up to assistant news reporter, and then served as editor-in-chief from 2015 to 2016. And then I kind of went back into the trenches my senior year and just worked on a lot of like long-term projects. I wanted to get clipped where I graduated. I was really freaked out about that because I spent a lot of time as an editor. And then I got an internship at WILL, ended up working in Chicago for a little bit. Then I went out to the Northwest Herald and worked there for a year as a reporter. And the whole time, I had that internship at Lake County News Sun, which was a part of the Chicago Tribune, and that was kind of my goal. After I get back there, and they ended up having an opening at the Aurora Beacon News, and it was kind of like right place, right time. I just kept consistently asking them and bring them for a year after I got out of college and ended up here. So I cover crime and courts, and for the last 2 years, COVID.
Thank you. Gian?
Yeah, hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. I actually went to a journalism summer camp through Illinois. It was in high school. It was called Media U at the time. And really that was the experience that convinced me I wanted to go to UIBC and to even pursue a degree in journalism and communications. So when I got to college, I had virtually no journalism experience. I knew I wanted to try everything. So I got involved with pretty much every student media organization that Illinois offered. I was in the video department as an assistant editor at the Daily Illini. I auditioned for WPGU, so I did personality for the radio station. At the time, there was a weekly talk show called See Weekly. So I helped out with production. I sat on that panel bi-weekly, and so yeah, I just got involved with everything. I think the great thing about Illinois is that you have so many options to choose from. And so one of my biggest advice for people that are currently students is to try it all and then figure out what it is that you like. And then whenever you find out what that is, whether that be radio, recording, anchoring, production even, then for you to really hone in on that and get really good at it. I personally never had an internship while I was in college. I was never able to land one, but because I was involved with so much in school, I was able to put that on my resume, be confident enough to talk about it, and ultimately I got my first job in middle of nowhere, Texas. I think it was like market size 142 or something, and there's 200, so it was very small. And somehow, got to Kansas City as the second market. So pay your dues, be patient, and take that first job if you get the offer.
Thank you. Stephanie?
Hi everyone, it's so great to join you virtually here from Chicago. Really wish I could have made it down, but I know you guys are making great connections and catching up with a lot of important and influential folks that came out of the university. Jordan, you asked that question, it's taking me way back. I was a reporter and a copy editor, then news editor and managing editor of reporting at the Daily Illini. It is, being at First and Green, we're going to, I think, 2 Daily Illini offices back, and then at Fifth and Green. I really had some of the most, career-making moments. My time at the Daily Illini really set me up to pursue a career in journalism, and I learned, if I'm being honest, way more in the Illini than I did in class, which I experiences I have heard. That's not to say, no, that's not to say that, listen, journalism program is class at University of Illinois, but there's nothing like getting your hands dirty and doing journalism on the fly every day. So I'm very grateful for my experience there. I had several internships while in college. I then, and after graduating undergrad, I pursued my master's degree at University of Illinois, also in journalism. Worked on some investigative projects at the time there, and I ended up interning for Red Eye, Tribune Red Eye, and then went out to work for the Aurora Beacon News, just like Megan, wonderful newspaper, the state's second largest city, covering a little bit of everything, education, some of the smaller towns around there, housing issues, and I ended my time there as a reporter focused on City Hall. After the Aurora Beacon News, I was hired at the late great DNA Info, which was a Chicago news website focused on the city's neighborhoods. 5 years into that, it sadly shuttered. Its billionaire owner shuttered it overnight. And I and some other people from that newsroom got together and said, you know, this neighborhood focused coverage is very valuable. We were hearing from readers all over the city that they were devastated about losing this very hyper-local news source. And so we got together and we hatched a plan, and we refounded the kind of news that we were doing as a nonprofit, but again, focused on the neighborhoods. And today, you know, that's what is Block Club Chicago. We founded it in 2018, and here we are 3.5 years later, and growing every day.
Great, thank you. Aaron, you want? Hello.
Hello. My name is Aaron. I cover politics for CBS News. While I was here at the University of Illinois, I tried to do everything I could with the DI. I started as just like a regular contributing writer/reporter. My second year, I was a daytime editor, so that would be covering breaking stories, editing breaking stories, which was a valuable experience to just be able to write and edit a bit faster than I had before. My junior year, I made myself a titled audio editor because I wanted to copy the daily podcast from the New York Times and do that here. And I did that while being a managing editor. And it was just a great experience. All facets of how news is made, I think, was really valuable to see. During my time at college, I interned for this freelance NPR reporter. I interned, I guess, for NPR in DC covering Capitol Hill, and then I interned with the investigative unit at NBC5 Chicago. And again, just like giving yourself the ability to see how audio broadcasts are made, TV broadcasts, which is very valuable. Left for a news associate position at CBS News, which was pretty much just like a half step up from intern. I was like getting bagels for the Sunday shows. But it was great. I paid my dues. I moved on to the CBS Evening News team, where I got to learn how to field produce, how to work with crews, how to develop sources. And then July 2019, I started with the political unit at CBS News as a broadcast associate. And I remember my boss told me, this position is whatever you make of it. Like, we barely have any parameters for you. And I was like, okay. So I covered House and governor races, tried to get out there in the field as much as possible. Tried to use my broadcast journalism skills too, to like be an MMJ, shoot some campaign events, some interviews, and I've been covering House and governor races ever since. Yeah.
See, you got the notepad. Yeah, I don't know if my path was just like that, but obviously I cover Pacers. I actually catch a flight tomorrow, Philly, end of the season in Philly and Brooklyn. So not much sleep in the next couple of days, but it's been fun. I actually started off my sophomore year at the Daily Illini Shout out to Jennifer Follis. Actually visited her when I went to cover the Suns game and got to reconnect. Anyway, she was the reason I got to journalism. Took journalism 200 and I kept looking her after class and I guess she got tired of me and told me to run for the DI. And I started off doing men's gymnastics my sophomore year. So everyone out there who always asks me, well, how do I cover the NBA? Like, and then when you get started, it's a good start. So, and they're all stronger than you and more handsome and all that type of stuff. Very humble, very humble. So I started doing men's gymnastics and working my way up to Daily Line. I think I went to volleyball, softball, men's basketball, and football, obviously. Got an internship with the Associated Press, which was, I was in over my head. When I first started, my first 5 or 6 pieces got ripped to shreds. I wanted to quit. I was about to quit. I'm not about to be happy. But Shannon Ryan, who was at the Tribune for a while, she was athletic. She pulled me aside after a football game a few years ago, maybe like my junior year in college, and told me that I was not an idiot and I could actually do this. And because of her, that's the reason I legit didn't quit. And from there, it kind of just took off. I actually majored in broadcast journalism. Did a radio show called Rolling Line at WPGU, which was a great time. My boy Ryan Wilson and Will Gerard, my brothers. We covered Paralympic athletes on campus, disability culture. It was eye-opening for me, it was something different. Also did Good Morning Illini, for those of you who know that show. I was there when they first started, like their very first season, I believe. It was maybe like 6 people, 7 people, and it was volunteers, so you're not getting credit for it, which I'm jealous of now. But yeah, and my whole thing was just casting a wide net and figuring out what I liked, and I kind of figured out toward my senior year, I did not want to lug the camera around. I'm a skinny guy, skinny shoulders, so I went all print, and when I first graduated, I'm so serious, like, when I saw how big the cameras were getting, when I got to, more and more classes, I was like, yeah, this ain't for me. So after I graduated college, the real part is I applied to a bunch of different places, obviously. I told no a lot. One job I applied for in Indiana was a preps high school sports reporter position. Up in Northwest Indiana, they call it the region. And I got it. And I covered those guys for 2.5 years, loved it. It was kind of crazy being 22 and covering like seniors who were 17, 18. It's like, dang, I was just where you were. Did that for 2.5 years, got hired to come back here to cover the Illini. Did that for 5 months this past summer. And then the Pacers job opened up and applied for it, thinking it would just be good experience, get your name out there, and I got it, and I was shocked. And yeah, I've been doing the Pacers gig since November, and it has been, we'll talk more about it, but it's been crazy. I mean, I've had a chance to do some pretty wild stuff. A lot of sleepless nights, a lot of sky miles, stuff like that, but it's definitely a lane I like being in, and something that I enjoy. I wouldn't be here, literally would not be here, in all seriousness, without doing some stuff at the DI, at Illini Media, skipping class, go to press conferences, things like that. So there you go. If there's a press conference and like there's no test, skip it. So.
Thank you, everybody, for your stories. So now I'd just like to have the students ask some questions. I know you have some questions, so have at it.
I guess I'll start with like one of the easier ones, but what was probably the hardest part of transitioning from student journalism to like the real world?
I would say the hardest part is getting humbled really quick when you're in a room full of professionals. When I started with Face the Nation at CBS, seeing how everyone worked, I felt like the dumbest person in the room. And I think that's okay. And when I realized that you should use that opportunity to ask questions, talk to professionals, talk to people in roles that you want to eventually be in, and then learn from them, and learn from mistakes, and those moments are strong. They make you a stronger person, they make you a stronger journalist and just professional in the field. And also, something like I had when I started with CBS is like a little bit of imposter syndrome. And I think what I wish I knew back then is that you put in work to get to where you are. And you deserve to be where you are, whether you fully realize it or not. And once you realize that and build your confidence, it helps.
For me, it was probably just realistically, just the workload. Like, you're not writing 3 or 4 stories a week, like you write 3 or 4 a day. And for me, especially being in sports, I apologize for being on my phone earlier, like literally the way it goes in the NBA, they tweet it. They send out injury reports every hour of every single day, and I just check it periodically to literally see if the guy's on it, and the new guy was on there today, so I had to tweet that out, and try to gain followers, get my clout up. But no, it's so fast paced and it can change at any moment. For example, I was at a Pacers practice yesterday, where it's this routine thing where Carlisle comes out and just like snaps on some rumors that he heard about, his position or not wanting to coach the Pacers. We shut it all down, and I'm like, dang, these dudes make my day so much longer. So like that's just how it is. The workload is kind of crazy. It's fast paced. I'm never really off. Like, to be honest, like it just is what it is. Like, even when I came here, I have access to everything on my laptop, my car, and stuff like that. So for me, it was adjusting to like, dang, I'm doing this like all day, every day. But at the same time, it's also fun because I don't have to worry about like tests and studying. If you're studying to like write the story, I'm serious. They're like, yeah, like I said, every now and then I had to make some sacrifices in college to get the story and also get the grade.
Anybody on our remote panel want to talk?
I would like really echo what Aaron said, just about being humble and like getting a job and just kind of doing whatever you can to get your foot in the door, whether it's like the internship of your dreams that you had your hopes on or it's not. The first year out of college, I worked, it was around like 40 miles away. I was at my parents' house and I would drive every morning out to McHenry and I was kind of like, what am I doing? Well, this is what I thought I was going to be doing, and I'm covering these city council meetings during a very, how would I say it, Trump-focused era where they would talk during meetings a lot, these city council members, and I just did not like the job or what I was doing at all, but I just felt like, okay, I gotta put in my dues, I gotta do what I'm supposed to do, I gotta get new clips, and being patient was really important because a job ended up popping up that I really liked, the job that I'm on now, and it made like all of the drives and all of that late night meetings with it.
I feel like you can sit in a classroom and read about how to work a camera all day, but this is a really hands-on industry. I feel like I learned more in my senior year with Ken Ernie in TV1 and TV2 than I did the previous 3 years in college, and then I feel like I learned more at my first job than I ever could in college. Personally, I don't think I even really knew what my day-to-day would entail. I mean, I don't think I had the mental and the physical stamina to be a reporter. I mean, it's fast-paced, there's a lot of pressure on you, and in school, you were able to retrack everything 10, 12 times if you needed to, and you could leave look-lives and try to get them 10, 15 times until you got the perfect one. But when you're in that live breaking news situation, and your paycheck's on the line, and your job's on the line, and you have however many thousands or millions of people looking at you, I think you get humbled really quickly. I think it's really important that you guys know and realize it's a hard industry before you go out into it, and know that it's going to be a hard grind for the first couple of years, and you just have to pay your dues. I think we all said we have to pay your dues, we really do, and it's going to be tough, and I think that's why you have to have that big why. Why am I in this industry? Because if you don't have that big why for you, to motivate you on your hard days, then, I mean, that's it, you're done.
Yeah, I had all the same struggles that the rest of the panelists described. I'd also just add in, I always worried how I was going to pay for gas because, like Megan, I was commuting about 40 miles a day. And then also, like, while I was working, driving around too. And gas back then was very expensive, which I see that that when you're in your first job, it honestly is a struggle, just like paying the bills, like getting to work. But from a professional perspective, I would say, you know, something that was a challenge for me early on in my career was you know, learning, failing and getting back up from those failures, because you, as an early career journalist, all of you are going to screw up royally, and there's still a line, and it's how are you going to recover from that? It's going to happen. You've got to hold yourself accountable, but how are you going to get back up and become better from it?
Real quick, I'll give you an example. So, sorry. Hey, nothing. No, real talk, like, literally, 2 days ago, there was a Pacers player, TJ McConnell. We anticipated he was going to come back. They had a question after being out like 50 games or something like that. So, as as I learned in school, you pre-write it, you get it all ready, sent it over to our editing desk, and I don't think like whoever was on the desk read my email saying like, hey, just in case this guy plays, like publish this. They just published it, and they hadn't announced it yet. So like literally the story reads like the coach is saying this, and he hasn't said anything yet. And so yeah, imagine my face from that one on Twitter. So yeah, I mean, I had to apologize for it. I called to the principal's office, like the locker room, they asked what happened. They were fine with it. But I mean, that's to think you're going to go into this and you're not going to make mistakes is just crazy. Honestly, you might as well just swing for the fences. Obviously, be mindful of the mistakes you make. Try to make the same one twice. And I mean, it's humbling. Like I write for any Star, I write for paper in Indiana, and if you make a mistake, it gets printed 100,000 times. Like the next day, you're going to hear about it from every single reader telling you that this was in 1963. It's like so. Hey. It happens, and you got to take it and roll with it. And always put in the headline, do not publish.
So I had a follow-up. Gian, you said that everybody needs their why. I'd like to know what each of yours why is. Why do you stay in this profession? Why do you do what you do? One of the remotes want to start with that?
Yeah. What? It's disconnecting here and there, so I'm having a hard time hearing the room.
I'm sorry, I'll speak without the mic. So my question is, Gian, you said everybody needs a why for why they get into this and why they continue to do what they do. What is each one of your why?
Okay. I'm just gonna be straight up honest with you guys. When I first got into this industry, I think it was for very superficial reasons. And that's coming from a very honest place. I thought being on TV would be cool, being in front of people would be somehow give me this affirmation that I needed. It was really cool to see people on TV and living this, you know, stardom, and I think that's why I was drawn to it at first. We talked a lot about when we got into the industry, we were humbled really quickly. You have to find a more substantial why than that. For me, I think over the last 4 or 5 years of being in the industry, it's the fact that I can help people. It's not going to be every day that you do an Emmy award-winning story and you help a huge population of people, but it's just a couple of those stories that will always stick with you throughout your career. I did a story on an animal shelter, and a really generous donor decided to pay off all of the adoption fees, and so the dogs were all adopted. Or me being able to reunite a victim with their rescuer following the mass shooting. Things like that, that really emotionally sticks with you. That, I think, for me, has been my why. The fact that I have the power and the voice to be able to do that for someone. Yeah, I think that's been my why and why I continue to get up and go to work every day. Even though I know on those breaking news days, it's the last thing I want to do. So, yeah, I think for me that's what it is.
Yeah, my dad is a firefighter, and he was very involved in city stuff and would go to, a lot of city council meetings and planning meetings, and he would always come home and talk to me about like what the aldermen were saying or kind of what's going on in the city. And I, at a very young age, I don't know why, but I found that very fascinating and wanted to know all of the local town gossip. And I love local news, and I think that really is what started it for me. And since then, getting to tell multiple stories and, like you said, stories that otherwise wouldn't be told, whether it's victims from the war mass shooting, or I told this story about a woman who was assaulted by a now known serial killer. And she reported it to the police, and the police didn't take her seriously at all and didn't do anything about it. And talk with her 40 years later, once they've uncovered more stuff about him, and get to have moments like that. It feels good to be able to give someone power in that way and be able to tell their story.
I'll hop in here. Early on in my career, I was interviewing for the first real job, I think. The city editor at the time who was interviewing me, his name was John Russell at the Beacon News, longtime editor there. He sat back in his chair and he said, "Let me guess, you want to change the world." And he had seen a lot of bright-eyed kids, say that to him, right? But it's true, and I think that even years and years later, that's why I do this. I do want to change the world. I want to use my microphone or the pen and paper to give somebody power who doesn't have power, right? Or who just isn't being taken seriously by people in power. I also, at the very bare bones, I just want to help people and help our and tell their stories, disrupt, shine a light on the messed up things that are happening and fix problems. And journalism really offers a way for us to do all of those things. Also, say at Block Club, we are really imagining how we help people. It's not just through stories. We also, one of the things we did at the height of the pandemic is we launched a COVID-19 hotline where people, anyone in Chicago could email, text, or call our hotline and get help booking vaccination appointments or getting questions answered about COVID-19 and finding the nearest testing site to them. We staffed an entire hotline with journalists, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, to answer all those questions, because the truth is, people had a lot of questions and they had nowhere to go with them. We write stories, we learn about COVID-19 for living. How could we match people up directly with that information and be helping them? And I'm proud to say, my entire team played a role in that. Every staffer played a role in staffing that hotline. And a year later, after launching the hotline, we've helped more than 1,000 Chicagoans, really get critical access to healthcare or the information that they need to make informed decisions.
I would say for me, the base of it is definitely personal, spiritual, believe in God. I love my family to death. I think I call them all the ghosts. On my phone now, I got a ghost emoji next to their name. My sister, my dad, my grandma. And that motivates me more than probably anything, just intrinsically, because I see the sacrifice they made for me to be here. And not just here as a student, but as a black man. Like, straight up, walk around the room, ain't nobody else in here black. Like, that's pretty much every room I'm ever in. So when I'm in these rooms, it's a reminder to, one, represent for the family, sacrifices, and those who have, beyond my family, who have paved the way for me. And then from the journalistic perspective, it's just the opportunity to show people that the athletes are human. Like, the ironic thing about being a sports reporter is that the stories that go beyond, like, who scored the most points, how great a player is, if you get into their life, those are the stories that travel the furthest. Those are the stories I always get emails about. Those are the stories that I've won a couple of awards for it. Not that I'm in there for that, but hey, the clout was nice. Nice. You know, that to me is probably the biggest thing. But every day when I wake up and I attack the job, I just think about how, even when I was in college, I had friends that was like, they could not believe I was, you know, washing dishes at the Ike and writing the PI for free when I could go get a job and do something else. But I was telling them, you know, if I can work hard at this and I don't even like love this, like what you think I'm gonna do when I get an opportunity I love, which I have now. So that's the biggest thing for me. And also, like I said, just being in this skin, being in this environment, being in this world, and knowing that somebody else is probably looking up to me. Like when I was doing high school sports, the reason I loved it so much is because I was young enough to kind of relate to the athletes I was covering, the music and everything like that. But they could see somebody, you know, in Gary, in Chicago, in Hammond, where the crime rate might be higher in other areas, but they could have somebody show up for them. Like I didn't care where they sent me. Like I was willing to go anywhere. I bought my car in 2018, and I got 93,000 miles, car deck today. So that tells you how much I was driving around Indiana, and even living there. I was living back in Romeoville, and trying to make a difference, like everyone else has said. And to me, it's not even about like getting famous. I would have never dreamed of being covered the Pacers. Didn't even really want it. I was satisfied with where I was at and happy with it and trying to attack that every day. But just knowing that, again, there's somebody else probably out there trying to need some inspiration, some love. That's kind of how I approach it. Like if you love them first and then tell a story, then you probably have a better chance of getting through to them and doing something that actually matters. Because to me, like, I love sports. It's great. I don't care who wins and who loses because it's always a winner or loser. But like, to me, I root for the people that I get to encounter and get to cover. And I promise you, every single time I do a story, like, the last deep dive I did on an NBA player, I think I put his stats in maybe like the last paragraph of like a 3,500-word story, and it was like our front page. You know what I mean? Like it was a big deal. So those are the stories that matter to me and why I go hard at this every day. Also, have fun with it. Like I do it because I have fun. That's a big reason why. Like I enjoy what I do. And yeah, unlike maybe they're a little more, I guess, heavier with the news, but like I honestly appreciate them for doing it and they're working off of me because when I go to a game, I'm like, first thing I gotta write about somebody losing or getting injured. Most of the time that isn't too bad because they make a lot of money and they'll be alright. So
Politics is tons of fun. I think you can have, every day is different. You can have a different reason for why you're doing what you're doing, depending on what you're doing. I think two of the main ones for me have already been mentioned. The responsibility you have in telling people stories, it weighs heavy, but it's so important. And to be able to see if you've made a difference there's nothing more gratifying than that. Representation of the Southern immigrants, they wanted me to go in the medical field and I saw a different chart. And I'm really happy I did. And to be able to represent them, you know, my family back home in the Philippines, it's awesome. But two other things is that this job can take you to places and you can meet people that you would not have met in any other profession. Whether that's like a family of Trump supporters at a rally deep red Virginia, or being at the top of the Washington Monument to cover Joe Biden's inauguration, to the middle of Mississippi, and my car is running out of gas, and a family just like pulled up, helped me out. These are opportunities and experiences I would not have had if I didn't choose this career path. And I think that, and the fact that you can, I can't remember, I'm sorry, which professor said it, but they said in one of my first journalism classes here that journalism was the first rough draft of history. And I think to be able to witness that is so amazing. And it holds so much power, and the fact you just feel grateful that you're there. Even if it's like something like the insurrection, or inauguration, or just campaign events, or just watching a candidate give a losing speech. Like it's part of history, and it feels good to be part of that. Having fun with it, for sure.
Thanks. Got another question?
Yeah, we actually have a question from the live stream. It's, can you explain how Twitter and social media is important to journalism, and having an online presence in general?
Did the remote panel hear that?
Can you get a repeat, Jordan?
Yeah, can you stand up and just, or here, let me bring you a mic.
Okay. Thank you. So the question is, from Connor Mason, can you explain how Twitter and social media is important to journalism and having an online presence in general?
It's weird because there is such, the DC bubble is a term that is used for reporting in DC, just journalists in DC, and it's so real. But you have to realize that a lot of people are on Twitter, and that's how you get your work out there. That's how you make sure the hours you spend on a story reaches the people that are interested. It's also a tricky place. That's why I try to just tweet my articles and pro Chicago Bulls tweets from now on. And then you gotta navigate that and just realize once you're out there, you represent whoever you're working for. And you do not want to get in trouble. You never want to be the story, unless it's getting an award, like James. You never want to be the story because that takes away from the voices you're writing about. And so it's an important role because it helps you just make sure your work is out there and, you get something out of it in terms of, recognition.
Yeah, I like having a blue check. It's pretty cool. Just joking, I could care less. But honestly, like all jokes aside, when I got verified, my boss reached out to me and set it up or whatever. It helps because once people see the blue check, they kind of think that you know everything or that you're perfect, or that whatever you tweet out is like the word of God or something like that. So they're more likely to click on your stuff, which helps, especially with Twitter. So for me, especially with basketball and live tweeting, you guys have put live scores out there, injury updates. If a player gets traded, you want to try to get something up on Twitter. Twitter is huge. I mean, we get story updates from Twitter, we get injury updates from Twitter. I'll give you an example. I was in Toronto 2 weeks ago, a week ago. Days weren't together, but the arena actually caught on fire. There was a speaker that caught on fire. We could smell it burning, and it did not smell like popcorn and bacon and hamburger. It was I was like, what the heck is this? And they started evacuating all the fans, and for like 30 minutes, none of us knew what was happening. And I had to hop on Twitter and post a bunch of videos and try to get some engagement. Obviously got a quick story up on our website, but those are the things where like you want to be useful with Twitter, with Instagram, those types of things. So it does matter a great deal. And I will say, speaking to Aaron, the one thing I'll say about Twitter is like, a year ago, I could like tweet off whatever I wanted to about any NBA player, but like now, I'm like, I might see this person. So I can't say this person is not good, or it's like, it might be a good idea. So just being mindful of things you say, because you will have to answer for them at some point, like you said, with your company. And also, being in Illinois, implant in Indiana, one lesson I learned is don't even try to go toe-to-toe with a bunch of IU fans, because they will flood your mentions and tell you, about their national championship from forever ago and how terrible our offering is. So I had some banter going back and forth. When IU beat Illinois, everyone piled on me, and then when IU lost to Iowa and Buzzard the next day, I piled on to them, but it was not very good. Honestly, it was the people like that were legit at it for basketball. So I would say just be mindful of like knowing that everyone is a little crazy on Twitter, so you might want to just get your tweets off every now and then and close the app.
I hope I got the question right. I would say that my relationship with social media has really changed recently because of COVID. When I got my job, I've never been to Aurora before. Aurora is the second largest city in Illinois. It's big, and there's a very diverse population that lives here. And I would go into the office every day, and I would go and meet people, but our office closed permanently in 2020. So there is no going back for me for the foreseeable future. So I always had made a Facebook account, and I would look on the what's happening and blah 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 town pages all the time and be lurking to see what people are posting about. But now I feel like I really constantly have to be checking it, seeing what people are writing about, seeing if people are saying that they're hearing gunshots or what's going on, because I'm not really there anymore, which I'm really paranoid. When there was the National Media Memorial, like the only reason why I found out about it was because I was sitting in a Dunkin' Donuts coffee shop and kept seeing all of these cop cars flying past the street, and eventually I was like, okay, this is way too many cars for this to be any normal type of thing, so I got in my car and went and followed it. But now, in my house at all these nights, I feel very removed and not always know what's going on in the loop, so just trying to find different avenues to reach people now is a much bigger part of my job than it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago.
Yeah, I feel like Twitter and really any social media platform is huge, especially in this day and age. And for journalists, I think it's important that we always see it as a tool. I would say that I get pretty much 95% of all of my story ideas from social media. All of my pitches come from there because that's where everybody's gravitating towards. And I think a lot of stations understand that. Our industry, we have to be flexible. We have to go where the audience is. And I think that's on our phones now. And so a lot of stations are pushing digital first. What I love about social media is that it can, it promotes competition, right? And I mean, we don't have to wait until the 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 p.m. show to see how we compete with our other affiliates that are on our market. We can actually be the first ones to get the news out hours before it airs. Another thing that I have noticed with social media, especially people who are on air, is that it's a really good opportunity for you to be personable with your viewers. It's really the only medium that you're able to communicate with them one-on-one, and I've loved it for that reason. People get to really see the personable side of you and see your personality, especially on platforms like Twitter. And I think that in the end really helps you, get closer to your viewers and have them understand who you really are as a journalist too.
I think social media in general, obviously, what everybody else said, they're great tools. I don't think we need to give you all a lecture in being careful with social media and, adhering to like an employer's guidelines about social media. In general, we've all did something dumb, but if you got it like no different than if you were writing a story. Would you put this in the story that you were writing? I think that's like a good, rule of thumb, right? That people all over the world are going to be reading what you write on Twitter and other social media. I'd also say that while Twitter is a very, Twitter is a tool for reaching people, only 23% of Americans are on Twitter, and of the 20% of Americans who are on Twitter, only a fraction of them are constantly, like journalists are. But while it's great to reach and connect with audiences, and our readers, right? Whether that's in person or through one-on-one email news, where they can look to us. Whether that's in a lot of local news, in a lot of the local newsrooms, you're going to find that the people really talking and sharing the dirt. It's really on Facebook or Instagram, kind of other mediums where neighbors are connecting more in neighborhood groups, things like that. And I'll say that TikTok has played a huge role in some of the investigative stories that we've done recently because again, it's just a place where people are talking. In our case, maybe somebody who's a little shady is bragging and showing off their $1 million cars on TikTok, right? And, you know, something as simple as that has played a big role in our investigative reporting. So, you know, you want to go where the people are. The people are on social media, but where else are they? Are they, you know, whether it's reaching older folks or other communities that might not even be online, where are we connecting with them? And I think we need to think about that too.
Thank you, everyone. Another question, Gwen?
Yes, hi. I think a big conversation that's starting to come up, in the journalism world is about the mental health of journalists, especially right when you're out of college. It's like all of the resources that you're familiar with are suddenly gone, and you're covering oftentimes really intense topics, like you mentioned mass shootings. So how do you make sure that you're promoting your mental health and staying safe, but also doing your job in the best way that you can?
This is the question my mom wants to ask me. She's like, I no fun, you don't do nothing, like, you know, you out there working. She tells me to get a slice, like literally every day, try to find something you can do to enjoy yourself, literally. So there's times, like when I can be doing something, like to be honest, today I could have, you know, took the rest of this day and just chilled back in my apartment in Indy, but I was like, you know what, I haven't done anything this week outside of writing about this team. Let me just go back to my, you know, campus and have some fun, you know what I'm saying? Like, enjoy myself. So I think for me, the biggest thing is just finding those pockets of time. And honestly, like, I don't know, other adults do this, they didn't warn me, but the older I've gotten, like, I schedule, like, me time in a sense. Like, I just know, like, when I get to this day of the week or this time of the night, like, I'm not doing a thing. Like, and you kind of have to do that. Like I said, my job is kind of crazy. Like, I can never be, like, really, like, 100% off the grid. Like, do not disturb does not exist in my life. But there are times where you can kind of anticipate it really slower, and I make sure to, you know, take a breather and enjoy myself. I even go, like I'm always around basketball, but I don't get to play as much. I'll play, like, once a week now at a church in Indy. With some people I know on Twitter, so it's all, I guess, kind of, you know, tying together. You know, still rusty, not very good anymore, I guess, but it's something to do just to enjoy myself. And also, I think the biggest thing too is you gotta ask people in your life that you can, like, just lean on and talk to and vent to and get it out to, whether it's your media colleagues, that a lot of great friends that are in this thing with me, whether they work, you know, all over the world, all over the country. I can call them up and kind of vent, they kind of understand where I'm coming from. And also, just back home, like I said, my family. I talk to my mom, like, twice a day, and I promise you, when I left high school, I thought I'm not gonna call when I go to college. I'm gonna be on my own. You ain't gonna hear from me. I call that woman every single day, and we kind of just reset each other, and that kind of helps me mentally stay with it. And also, a big line on the work is too much. Like, there's been times throughout the year where I had to kind of get away from the shame of it all, but, like, just some of my editors, like, hey, like, I've written 7 stories in 2 days. Like, I need somebody else or a freelancer. I might need to hold off on this one for a couple of days or need an extension. And knowing that the work that I put in, I didn't, like, cheat the grind. I didn't, like, you know, do, like, you know, I didn't half-ass it, but I put my all into it. But knowing, like, I can't do everything all at once. So, and I think my editors have respected me for that. And it's, you know, again, helped me avoid burnout, because in the NBA, you can burn out super quick because you're always moving, always traveling. I barely even buy groceries. I'm never at home. I don't go out and pay rent. Like, I should just, you know, get on this couch or something like that. But again, you got to find those pockets of time to enjoy yourself.
Yeah, just, like, take care of yourself any chance you can get. James said a lot of what I was going to say. I think, like, the moments where, especially, like, in politics, there are moments where you're covering something and it's just gross and it feels bad. No, like, it just does. Like, yeah, like racism, for example. And when you experience moments and you have to cover topics like that, take time if you can, get a day off if you can, and just do anything that's not journalism or not reporting. Don't look at Twitter, and allow yourself to not heal, but just, like, give yourself a moment. We're all human beings. Take care of yourself physically. Rest when you can. You can't live the college lifestyle when you get out of college. You just don't have the budget either. So take care of yourself. And I think, I'm not trying to generalize, but like, I feel like the younger generations are better at knowing that. And y'all do that, so it's good to see.
Yeah, I think like when you start a new job, you feel like, okay, I have to prove myself, I'm in the hospital, I have to be the best. And when the Aurora mass shooting happened, 5 people were killed, 5 police officers were shot, 2 other employees were also injured, and we worked. Me and my one coworker just worked. We were supposed to have that Monday off for President's Day, and we worked Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and I don't think I had a day off for like 20 days. But we were both very candid with each other and talked to each other. There were times when we would be on the phone with each other at 1 a.m., like talking about our emotions and what was going on and talking to the victim. I think that's really important, is finding someone who's you can live with and just share that stuff with, so that you're not bottling it all up on the inside. And then fast forward to 2020, I covered riots that happened in Aurora from the death of George Floyd, and a co-worker had spoken kind of an unsafe situation. I don't know if you could call it like second degree pepper spray, but we were running from that and running from rubber bullets. We were in a bad situation, but I was really upfront with my boss, I was really upfront with my coworkers about it, and I really forced myself that summer to set the boundaries of when I have to get off, I'm gonna check. Like, I'm not gonna be on my email time, because if you're doing it 24/7, you're gonna get burnt out. I kind of experienced that summer. I really try now to set more boundaries with that, and just to be honest with your boss and with your coworkers too. And even that night, one of the buildings was on fire, and my coworker left, and I called my boss and said, hey, I think it was a Dollar General. Like, this building's on fire, but I'm here by myself now. Do you want me to stay? What do you want me to do? And my boss actually at 1:30 a.m. like left it. I think he was a little stir crazy from being at home at this place and wanted a reason to go out because this was in the height of COVID, but he left and came out and stood with me. And that meant a lot to have a boss who was willing to do that and willing to stick around in unsafe situations. So I think it's just finding a coworker who you can confide in and being upfront about experiencing.
Sadly, I think burnout is just so common in our industry, and it can be a really hostile environment to work in sometimes. You know, on your hardest days, the last thing you want to see is a mean comment from somebody on Facebook telling you they don't like what you were wearing, or, you know, saying microaggressive things, and so it's hard. It's definitely hard, and I think burnout is really common. My biggest advice would be to set those boundaries. I think now in my career, I know that there's no story or life shot more important than my health, and that includes my mental health. And so creating those boundaries early on, I think is important, and communicating to your coworkers and your bosses that work is a part of your life, it's not your whole life. What that looks like for me is actively turning my phone off or putting it on silent and putting it in a drawer on my weekends and not looking at it, even though I'm tempted to. Turning my notifications off on my email during the weekends, and then taking the PTOs that are given to you as a part of your contract without feeling guilty about it, because that's built into your contract. You deserve that, you were given that, and so don't ever feel guilty to use it. And a sick day includes a mental health day, so do not feel like you have to prove yourself, explain to your boss why you felt sick. You can simply say, I don't feel well today, and you can apply to your mental health too. I think another good advice would be to ask this as a question in your interview process. For me to get the job here in Kansas City, I went through a lot of interviews with a lot of different stations, and it was always a question that I asked the news director. How is the company morale at your station? How do you guys address mental health? How do you guys talk about it? Is that openly talked about in your station, among your newsroom? And when you see a colleague that is struggling, is there an intervention there? You know, these are conversations you can have in the interview process and communicate to them that this is something really important to them. And so I would just say create those boundaries early on and over communicate what your priorities are. And it's not work. That's not who you are.
I see this from maybe a little bit of a different perspective, because certainly I've been a reporter, but now I am hiring reporters and employing reporters. I would say that every young journalist needs to make a plan for how they're going to stay really healthy now. This is very stressful work, not only stressful from like a burnout and demanding hours perspective, but also, often reporters are put into some traumatic scenes where you might see violence or death or shooting, all sorts of things, right? And you need to make how you're stay healthy, whether for that, like making some leaving on coworkers or talking family, things like that. Also, I think we need to realize as an industry that what people need to stay mentally healthy is going to vary, right? So something that we're talking about in our newsroom is like perhaps mental health stipend for our reporters that they could use how they want. For one reporter that might be for therapy, for another reporter it might be yoga classes, for another it might be like going to see a movie. That's going to look a little bit different for everybody, but ultimately, you need to make a plan for that with your boss. Certainly, I will say culture was a huge part in your ability to stay healthy, and that certainly includes the workplace. I've worked in newsrooms that had horrible culture, and that certainly plays into your pump and really your ability to do a good job, right? But I've also worked in newsrooms that I think have fostered healthy cultures. And when you interview for a job, you should not only be talking to the people that you're interviewing with, talk to people who work there now and ask them what is it like to work there. They will tell you if they are trying to leave or if this is the best job ever. So that should be something that you consider too.
Can I just add one thing to that? It's some great advice here by the panel. I would say, especially starting out, we talked earlier about paying your dues. I'm going to say pick your spots. There are going to be moments where you're going to be working hard, and that work ethic people will see, and that can reward you down the road. And there are going to be moments where you're going to be totally burnt out, and you just kind of have to keep going. So like every election, the month before every election, I just know I'm not going to do many social things that month. I just know that's how it's going to go. I prepare myself the months before, but I just know this is go time. This is what we signed up to do. So you got to pick your spots sometimes, and just want to add that.
Any other questions? Anyone?
I have another one that we had.
Go ahead.
I was talking to this guy that works in publishing, and he said that oftentimes when he gets young people that are journalists in his office interviewing, he always asks them, okay, everyone here knows how to report and to write, but how are you gonna bring an audience with you to my publication? So I was wondering how you go about getting a personal audience for your biotech.
too much about like their brand in a sense. Like I want my brand to look like this. My brand is just me in a sense. I was in college. I changed my Twitter name to Romeoville Kid because I'm from Romeoville, Illinois. And it was like a joke because no one ever knows what Romeoville is. So I was like, all right, put my Twitter thing has literally followed me since then. And I think one of the biggest things when it comes to just figuring out like what audience you want to have is being authentic to you. Like I would say for the most part, like what people see, like what I tweet about, what I write about, how I write is pretty much conveyed to me in person. And especially just starting off most likely you'll start off in a smaller market, you have a chance to create a wider footprint of like actually being in the space. Rich Martin, one of my first journalism teachers, was like the shoe leather. He always said shoe leather, like you gotta get out and get around. So for me, it started off here at the Illini covering stuff from DI. And to this day, I have followers that are from, back when I was, 19, I'm 26 now. And so, on top of that, when I was doing high school sports, the biggest thing was just getting out into the public. Me and my editor at the time, Mike Clark, we would like go back and forth over how much I was driving. He's like, man, you ain't gotta go to every high school in Northwest Indiana. You don't have to go to every high school, you don't go to every practice, but showing up mattered. And it made people care. It made the stories better. And it made the audience better. And because of that, again, now that I have the job that I'm doing now with the Pacers, everyone that I wrote about, every kid I wrote about, they're still following me, they're still reading my stories. I got parents that are telling me how proud they are of me and things that I've done. And it's not even like an ego thing, it's just remembering like where you come from and remembering that if you show up for people, it matters in a sense. And that's a pretty easy way, in my opinion, to build something that's authentic. It might take longer to build, especially in like NBA, like you can get a blue check and you just start firing off whatever you want to and, starts putting hot takes out there. You might get a bunch of followers without engaging with your content. Like for me, it's always about, I'd rather have less followers and less, people, but if it's more engagement, then that means more to me. And again, it's cool to see the journey. I have kids telling me like, a year ago you were interviewing me like from my high school baseball state championship, and now you like interview LeBron, like this is crazy about them, like having that journey and remembering like that those relationships actually matter. They're not just like this one-time thing. You can get bonded that way and kind of carry it with you. So my audience is pretty much just people that I feel like I've taken the time to actually know beyond it's one story for you, never speak to you again type of way. So it's a good time, I promise.
Like a true politician, I'm going to answer a question you didn't ask. I have never been asked that question, to be honest, in terms of, especially when you get out of college, in terms of building a brand, like, I've just never asked. It's something you definitely got to do in today's age of journalism. And I think one way to do that is to really, put a premium on knowing a topic, especially in political journalism. Like, everyone's covering everything. It's all covered. There's so many outlets. To find what's not being covered, or a different way to look at things, I think just really finding a niche topic and placing a premium on that is a way to build your brand. And also, in I think most sports, any type of journalism, it also helps you to break news.
Yeah.
That's the biggest way you can build a brand, is to break news. Is to bring something new to news. That's it.
So you gotta do news, in news?
That builds your reputation, and you want your brand to be your reputation and your work. And I think that's the best advice I've been given by professionals, and something I'm still trying to follow every day and get better at. But that's definitely, in terms of building a brand, just to build it around your work, that's definitely the way to do it. A way to do it.
Yeah, I would say I've always worked in really hyper-local newspapers, so I don't know that I've had that many people follow me, because people who live in Aurora want to read only about Aurora versus before I was out Henry County, they only want to read about Henry County. But I think that what Aaron said, just trying to find what is unique, and we've seen that in Aurora a lot, especially with the shooting. I mean, there were so many national outlets that were covering this mass shooting going on, but we were the ones that like knew the owner of this local flower shop and how they were giving flowers to all of the victims and covering everything for their funerals, or we were the only ones who got an interview with the shooter's family just from word of mouth by knowing people. And we have a columnist who's worked for us forever, Denise Crosby. She just shows that being somewhere for such a long time and building trust. And people in rooms, and she does interviews that I could never imagine. I'm like, how did they agree to do that? Or why are they even talking to you? But I call it the Denise Crosby effect. And I think that's important to build. It's important to build just your own honesty, because that word travels and that word spreads. And then more and more people will feel comfortable talking to you in a day and age where, honestly, I have a lot of people who are just like, no, I don't want to do an interview. I don't feel comfortable anymore.
I feel like when it comes to growing your followers, slow and steady wins the race, you can do a lot of gimmicks and create all these followers, but they're not really organic. They're not really there to stay and grow with you. That's a good question. I think kind of to piggyback off of what Megan was saying, people like other people who make them feel seen. So going out into some of those historically silent communities and those communities that you don't really hear from, and being the first journalist to reach out to them and show interest in what goes on in their communities. I think once you gain one friend from that population of people, then 30 others follow. And so instead of focusing so much on, I need to grow an audience, I want more followers on my social media, I would advise you to focus more on consistency and be diligent with the quality of journalism that you're doing every day, and then with time, your following just kind of grows organically.
You gotta just do good journalism. Anybody can tweet anything. Like, I promise you, there's like people who are much better at Twitter than me, but like you still have to actually do the work. Like, don't get that twisted. Like, I understand it's a big part of the job, but it is not the job. Like, the job is to, the story and things like that. Like, so there's been times where I might tweet a story out, and I'm like, dang, like this, the other day, on Twitter, I found out like a week later, oh, we got 5 subscriptions off this story. So like, again, do the work, and also, like you said, break news, because I beat Woj one time, ESPN. I beat him once or twice, and and I got I'll say twice for a cloud. But no, and I legit got a couple, like literally people who, it was like maybe like by 3 minutes or something like that, and people were like, oh my God, this guy beat Woj, I'm gonna follow him. So it does, but like help you to break some things, get some things out there, but also just do the work diligently. And that, to me, as long as you don't cheat the grind, if you try to cheat it, it won't like last, it won't really materialize. But if you do good work, at least try to do good work, fail a lot and get better, that will last a lot longer.
How do you contrast that with some of the people who have tremendous audiences, but they're basically promoting a party line? Not necessarily true, it's not necessarily good journalism. In fact, in some cases it might be very, very poor journalism. But they're famous, they've got people listening to them, they have massive influence.
How do you address that, or?
How does that contrast the idea of doing good work and building an audience? Because you have the examples of several name brands on several large media outlets who do exactly the opposite.
It's the contrast. It's tough because Twitter can be such an echo chamber. To be honest, I'm not thinking of them when I do my job, if that makes sense. And
there's 2 roads,
Yeah.
like Robert Frost said.
Yeah.
One's the high road, which you're promoting, but the low road goes business issue, is this something we throw out to bean counters?
A business issue.
Sure, you're either an entertainment or you're a news. You're not
Sure.
the same thing.
They're not. Yeah, you want to.
I think one of the biggest things that you can do is just call out BS like when you see it. Like that's, I'm being 100% real. There's a lot of times people who have a lot of followings, and they can tweet a lot of things that sound good, but it's not true. So I think actively calling that out and not getting tired and being diligent on calling that out matters a great deal. You might lose the Twitter fight, but at least you can just stand out by and not say anything. You know what's happening is wrong. So that's usually my stance. I have no problem addressing nonsense, especially with respect to personally. Like I've had people, say something about me having Black Lives Matter in my Twitter box, something like that. I will gladly educate you, respectfully, of course. And I have no problem doing that. Will I win them over? No. Like most of them, no. They're probably gonna block me. But you'll know that you can't come to this space and just do BS because we have a blue check and a bunch of followers.
Sorry, I gotta step in really quick here. The machine that I'm running this on is about to run out of battery, and unfortunately Macintosh only gives you 2 inputs now on any computer. So if I disconnect and try to go in, I'm gonna lose some part of this. So we're gonna keep going for the next minute or 2 until this battery drains out. So I'm sorry, but just keep going.
Just building on what James said, especially in politics, like, you gotta call out this information. In terms of how to address it, you're right. People are there's a lot of grifters out there. You gotta know what you do and just stay focused on your craft and your role in news. And sometimes the better voices win, sometimes they don't. But that's a big question facing this industry right now. I don't have an answer, I'll be honest.
So, any next questions? Anything that anyone wants to ask? Any last statements from anybody on the panel?
Fail fast. I'm so serious. Make sure you get out there, fail fast. It's gonna be uncomfortable, it's gonna hurt. You're gonna get told no a lot. I applied to probably 50 jobs after I got out of college, and that's a low from some of my friends. Heard back from 2, went up on 5 interviews, and I got told no after the 5th interview. And I was thinking, I didn't lie my way through the 5th interview. Y'all, I need this job. And yeah, so just you're gonna get humble, but I always say to stay confident in yourself. Somebody's gonna tell you you're not good enough at it, but just stick with it. And if you're not good enough, in your mind you know it, keep working until you are. Because every person you see that's big time, they had to start somewhere too. Like they were just born great journalists. They had to work for it too. So yeah, just have fun with it. That's my biggest thing. Like I have to have fun with it in some aspect, whether it's the job, friend, or something. So again, get you a slice of fun, attack it, fail fast, and don't be afraid.
A lot of great journalists went to U by, and I think I was able to, like James, like I applied to a bunch of jobs. I was able to get into CBS because I had a classmate that worked for this one show there, and I just asked her, because I sent them an application, heard crickets. I asked her, who's the HR person that I should at least email to at least push my resume? She gave me an email, and here I am. I think stay in touch with classmates and see where they go, stay in touch and just observe their work, and if it's in something you want to do, reach out to them. The worst they can say is nothing, and that hasn't happened to me yet, thankfully.
Remote panelists?
Yeah, just your involvement in Illini Media means so much more than you realize it does right now. Like, all the clicks that you're getting, all the hard work that you're doing, while your friends might be partying, and you're working on, a news story and kind of feeling like, well, what am I doing? I don't even make any money. It matters. It matters big time. And the people that you meet here, they're gonna go get jobs. They're gonna be connections that you can use. I mean, even like Jordan said at the beginning, when I interviewed for that internship, it helped knowing that he was a part of Illini Media. Well, I didn't get that internship. I ended up working in the suburbs for a Chicago company who owns a suburban paper, and just any connection that you can make. Illini Media has a lot of people in journalism still, and it might not seem like it right now, but once you graduate, the work that you're doing right now really is important.
Yeah, I mean, I can think back to my senior year of college. I was so nervous that, oh, am I going to have a job after graduation? What's the real world going to be like? I would just tell my seniors, trust that Illinois has prepared you. Not every J school is the same. You have all the tools that you need to succeed in the real world. Graduating from UIUC and having the your resume to begin with. And to go back to my very first point tonight, find your why and remind yourself of that on a day-to-day basis. You need that motivation on your hardest days.
Take us home, Stephanie. Oh, you're on mute.
And it's out the door now, I can't share what I was about to say. No, I was just gonna share that we are actually hiring interns, summer interns. Applications are due by April 15th. I've not seen nearly enough Illinois applications come through the door, which is disappointing. So if you guys are interested in reporting in Chicago, our interns do not get coffee. They come away with clips. They get to cover a little bit of everything, including stories that interest them. So please apply for internships. I will tweet out details about that right after this, and it's also on Block Club's Twitter. All the details. And thank you so much. This was great. It was so great to be with you virtually. And the other thing that I would just share is right now, because of the Hall of Fame is going on, you all have the most influential journalists in the country where you are. If you want to look where they work, go talk to them. Go pick their brain, go make a connection, and do both.
Great. So thank you so much to our panelists. Let's give them a round of applause. I think this has been really illuminating for everybody, and thank you for coming. Just a reminder, tomorrow at 1 p.m. we'll have another panel discussion on the future of student media. So please come for that. That'll be moderated by Ed Epstein.